Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This is the 8th episode of Story in which the third Hokage finally resolves to do something about Naruto's treatment, and he seeks the assistance of someone known for influencing things from the shadows. When Naruto has everything he needs, including an elder brother who will do anything to protect him, what could possibly go wrong? Please subscribe and smash the like button. Now, let's jump right in.
Izo was frowning. That was all that Anko could really gather from the boy at the moment. The purple-haired woman was becoming slightly nervous as she sat completely naked on the floor with her legs crossed. Izo had said that he had been joking about taking off all of her clothes, but she had still insisted. It wasn't as if he could see her through his blindfold anyway. That being said, Anko wasn't nervous about being naked, she had long since gotten over that, but the fact that Izo was frowning so much while observing her cursed seal was not helping her maintain happy thoughts. She had been absolutely ecstatic when the teen had offered to have a look at her seal, even if Naruto had mentioned that the older boy would probably not be able to remove the thing. In her mind, any possibility was worth looking into when it concerned removing the taint of her former sensei. Still didn't make being at the mercy of a blind kid any easier to cope with. Even if he were to do something she didn't approve of, she would be unable to stop him. Seal masters were a rarity for a reason, and that reason was directly related to them being able to toy with the fabric of reality on a whim. Anko was now at Izo's mercy in more ways than one. The Uzumaki in question was still frowning as he paced slowly back and forth behind the seated Kunoichi. This is fucking ridiculous. How the hell could Orochimaru screw up this badly? How the fuck is it still stable? How the fuck is Anko even alive? Needless to say, Izo was not happy. The cursed seal on Anko's neck was a prototype at best, and even that was really pushing it to the point of over-complimenting it. The thing was a bare minimum skeleton of the real seal, maintaining practically all of the worst factors of the seal while lacking many of the beneficial aspects. By all rights, the thing should have long since collapsed in on itself and ripped Anko's chakra system apart with it. On the plus side, Izo had been able to very clearly observe the adverse effects of the seal without them being clouded by the more complex arrays that the finished product often contained. From what he could see, the cursed seal was designed to act like a leech at first, feeding on the host chakra to fuel itself temporarily while it assimilated itself into and throughout the host chakra coils, effectively embedding its existence inside the victim. Any attempt to forcefully remove the seal without a seriously powerful technique of some sort, would definitely kill the person. Had he have gotten a look at it less than 2 weeks after it had been placed on her, then he might have had a chance. Well Anko, I have bad news, some slightly worse bad news, and some not so great good news, Izo said, trying to maintain his cheerful demeanor. Anko smiled nervously. What's the bad news? The bad news is that this seal is a bare to the bones, only made of the bad shit, prototype, he replied. By all logic it was never designed to last this long, or even to do anything really. It's a dud made to show the overall symptoms of the seal's design. The only benefit the thing seems to have is that it actively protects its host, you, from external contaminants such as viruses or infections, he explained. The snake summoner grit her teeth and clenched her fists angrily. Orochimaru had used her as something worse than a lab rat. He had put that seal on her just to check for any faults, not at all expecting or intending for her to survive it in the long run. It was insulting and served to make her feel even worse than she ever had before. And the worst bad news? She growled through her teeth. Izo sighed deeply. The cursed seal is designed to fully merge with its host's chakra network within around 2 weeks, a month tops. You've had this thing for years now, so it's merged with you completely, quite an advanced assimilation considering its defective nature. Keeping that in mind, I am sorry to say it, but there is no way that I can remove it without killing you, at least not without Orochimaru's own notes on it, he explained. Anko's nails dug deeply into her palms as she fought hard to stop herself from destroying something in rage. Just when she finally thought she could be free of the mark that had cursed her for so long, her hopes were brought crashing down on top of her. It was a sick joke of some higher power, she just knew it. It was as if her misfortune and suffering was the pinnacle of some deity's amusement, and there was nothing she could do about it. However, Izo chirped cheerfully. There is an upside to this, hence the good news. Since the seal is so basic, potent, but basic, I am easily able to build onto and into it. As it is now, I could probably turn this seal into almost anything, so long as I remove the tiny piece of Orochimaru's soul, he said casually. His soul, Anko yelled angrily. Izo shot his arm out and grabbed her by the shoulder, forcing her to stay seated and simultaneously activating a seal to paralyze her in place. Don't try anything stupid, okay? It's a minor issue and something that I can easily deal with so long as you don't try and hold on to it, which I doubt you would do anyway. Just relax and stop being emotional. When you finally calm down, have a think about what you might want me to turn the seal into and we'll work from there," he said calmly as he went about inspecting a very well-kept tea ceremony set that Anko happened to own. Anko muttered some curses as she closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. Thankfully, the paralysis seal allowed her to move into a more comfortable position so long as she wasn't trying to get up and move away from the one spot. More of a location-locking seal it seemed. She thought about Izo's offer, making sure not to make a hasty decision. In the end though, she just couldn't think of what she could want the seal to be. She was no seal expert, so her knowledge on what seals were capable of was somewhat limited to the ones that were commonly available. One thing she did know though was that seals applied straight onto a person like hers were extremely versatile in function. "Is there anything you would suggest?" she asked curiously, hoping to get an apparent expert's opinion on the matter. "Well, depending on how much work you are willing to let me do, I could easily add several functions to the seal on its own, along with a few minor arrays around it for other things you might want or need. The real question is whether or not you want to trust me to play around with it," he replied with a shrug. "It's all up to you." Anko weighed her options. On one hand, she could specify what she wanted and hopefully get a useful seal out of it that she could probably only use for certain things, or she could let Izo go nuts and pimp out the seal with whatever he wanted, which would probably lead to multiple benefits. She had no reason to not trust him, aside from his perverseness, and he would definitely be able to suit her out perfectly if given the time. Anko figured she had nothing to lose and grinned. "Do what you want and take as much time as you need. Pimp me out like one of your French girls," she purred playfully. Izo deadpanned at her. "Please refrain from quoting bad movies while I work. It's distracting and in bad taste. I expect better from you," he droned emotionlessly. "Yeah, my bad on that one," Anko admitted sheepishly. "But seriously, go crazy on me. Do whatever you think will work best and then explain it all to me so that I don't need to spend weeks learning shit. I already went through the academy once, I do not need a repeat." "Okay then. First thing first, let's get that little piece of the snake bastard out of you. Word of warning, this shit is going to hurt," the teen said seriously. Anko pouted. "Aren't you supposed to say 'oh don't worry dear, this won't hurt a bit'?" she asked mopingly. "I am not a dentist. Such lies are for children and dumbasses who are fun to mislead. Now, whatever happens, do not get aroused," Izo said sternly, placing his left hand over Anko's cursed seal. "Aroused?" Anko asked incredulously. "Why the hell would I get aroused?" "Magic hands," he stated simply. "Magic ha-ah." Anko screamed loudly as she felt something getting literally torn out of her very being. It was chillingly cold, yet it burned and sent agony through her veins. Izo smiled sadly. This was going to be the more painful part of the whole process, but judging from her reaction so far, she would be fine. The only problem Izo could foresee is that he would most likely pass out after this and be stuck in Anko's apartment for the night. Most men would dream of such a thing, but he knew better than they did and he really wanted to keep his manhood intact. "I wonder how Naruto is going. I never did find out why he was in the Inuzuka compound. Oh well, I'll figure it out later," he thought, with a mental shrug before returning to the task at hand. Orochimaru's soul was almost completely removed now, thanks mostly to Anko's complete rejection of his presence and a faulty seal. He huffed quietly. This was going to be a long-ass night for him. Naruto stared. He blinked several times, rubbed his eyes, pulsed his chakra, stared some more, even bit his tongue hard enough to make sure he wasn't under a genjutsu, and yet nothing changed. He was feeling mixed emotions about what he was seeing, most of it being fear with a hint of distress, while also maintaining a healthy level of irritation and anger. He wasn't sure how to react, or even if there was an appropriate reaction for his situation, but he was not one to simply back away from something because he didn't know what to do, and so he did the one thing he could do. He asked, "How the hell did you get in here?" he questioned seriously. A quiet eep sounded throughout the room as Fu tried to leap to her feet and jump off of Naruto's bed at the same time, the result of which ended with her on the floor in a heap of tangled limbs and a blanket. Naruto just shook his head as the girl stumbled to her feet and grinned sheepishly while waving at him nervously. "Hey," she greeted. "I'll ask you again. How did you get in here?" Naruto asked emotionlessly. I opened the door. And walked in," Fu replied unsurely. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the girl before turning slowly and staring questioningly at his wide-open bedroom door. "You just walked in?" he asked curiously. "Uh-huh," she answered simply. "That should not be possible," the blonde said in confusion. "Why?" Fu asked curiously. "Was your door supposed to be locked?" "It wasn't supposed to be locked. It was locked. It was locked down tighter than the Hokage Tower, with some of the strongest and most complex sealing arrays that my father could create, all designed to keep this room off limits to anything outside of it except for those who are blood linked to the key seal. I am the only person alive who has the blood to open the door, meaning that something must have gone wrong for you to get in here so easily, Naruto explained, still staring at the door with a serious expression. So, you're freaking out because your lock didn't work? The Nanabe Jinchuriki asked in confusion. Privacy was something she had in spades back in Taki, the concept of a door lock being completely foreign to her and also redundant. No one tried to enter her place, so she had never had to worry. Naruto sighed deeply. It's not just about the lock. My room is one of the most secure places in all of Konoha. The fact that you can apparently walk into it without a care raises some very worrisome questions. Fuke worked her head to the side curiously. But it's not like I was coming in here to do anything bad. I just wanted to wait for you, she said innocently. The blonde's expression softened at the girl's innocent and curious expression. The inquisitive gleam that seemed to always flicker through her orange eyes was quite possibly the best cheer-me-up that Naruto had ever found for himself. Deciding to stop making a fuss about her being in his room, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki instead took notice of her change in clothes. She was still wearing the white sleeveless midriff top that she had before, but her skirt had been replaced by a pair of plain black pants that were clearly too large for her, having the legs rolled up so as to not drag under her feet and a belt barely holding them at her waist. As it turned out, Fu had taken to wearing the pants so that the waistband only just hung around her hips loosely. Whether or not that was simply because of their larger size or her own preference was yet to be known. "Where did you get the pants?" Naruto asked curiously. Neither he or Mikado had found the time to take her shopping since they had gotten back, and the size of the clothing item showed that they definitely were not her own. The girl grinned happily, an action that made Naruto smile in return on reflex. "Izo gave them to me," she chirped. "He said something about maintaining modesty and told me to wear these. He even gave me the belt too." It was painfully clear how ecstatic Fu was about being given something as a gift. Naruto made a mental note to thank his brother later. The skirt that Fu had worn before had been quite short and was made of a far too thin and light material that took every chance it could to flutter in the wind and give brief glimpses at what was underneath. They may have served as a good distraction in a fight, but within a village, they were somewhat impractical and indecent. He shuddered mentally as he thought about what Anko would say about him calling Fu's former outfit to be indecent. The Snake Summoner's outfit made anything else seem decent, even to the point where running around in one's birthday suit was no longer a big deal. However, that worked. "Well, they don't really fit you too well, but you look good either way. I'll take you shopping for some new clothes tomorrow after I finish up some stuff, but for now you'll just have to make do," he said casually. "Now, why exactly were you waiting for me in my room?" he asked suspiciously. Fuke worked her head to the side. "Did I need a reason?" she asked curiously. Sort of, I guess. Most people don't just wait for someone in their bedrooms without a good reason or more personal intentions," Naruto replied with a light blush. He prayed to Kami that she had not gotten a bad idea from Mikado's lesson. He wasn't sure how he would be able to handle that situation without causing an incident somehow. The mint-haired girl furrowed her brow as she processed Naruto's words before blushing brightly and waving her hands frantically. No. That's not why I'm here," she exclaimed quickly, her blush gradually getting more intense. Naruto let out a mental sigh of relief. "Good," he breathed out before his eyes widened. Not that you aren't good enough or anything, you're very beautiful, it's just..." The blonde hung his head and groaned at his own stupidity. Fu giggled as her blush got even brighter. "It's alright, I understand," she said softly, trying very hard to fight down her blush. Mikado had taught her about practically everything, including relationships and other trivial things, so she knew exactly why Naruto was acting all nervous. However, just because she knew why, didn't mean that she understood why. Did Shinobi not have more important things to worry about than acting nervous around the opposite sex? "This is so sweet it's sickening," Kurotsuchi said from the doorway. Naruto groaned loudly as he turned to stare blankly at the Iwakuno-ichi. "Is it the day where everyone just feels like they can come into my room whenever they want? What are you here for?" he asked with a slight edge to his voice. Kurotsuchi snorted. "Don't think so highly of yourself, I didn't come here to spy on your room. I'm just wondering where Izo is. I need to talk to him," the black-haired girl said irritably. The blonde shrugged. "Not a clue, sorry. He disappears now and then for random amounts of time, although there is a chance he has locked himself down in the basement. He'll be back eventually. Now, if you'd please close the door on your way out, I would be most appreciative. The girl rolled her eyes and closed the door as she walked off down the hall to find Mikado and maybe ask if she knew where Izo was. Naruto mumbled something about Iwa and stupid grudges before turning back to Fu and smiling warmly at her. Look Fu, I'm glad that you waited for me, for whatever reason you had, but please don't ever try to come into my room without permission again. This room is locked up for a reason and I don't want you to get messed up in things that shouldn't concern you, Naruto said softly. Fu nodded. Alright, she chirped. Good. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to go to sleep for a while and then get ready to deal with a potential pain in my ass tomorrow, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki grumbled. Do you want help? The girl asked hopefully. Naruto hummed in thought before smiling. Actually, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. You can come hang out with me tomorrow while I sort something out, and I can introduce you to some people. The Nanabi Jinchuriki grinned widely. Awesome. I'll see you tomorrow then. Fu exclaimed cheerfully before exploding into a swarm of bugs that quickly flew out through the small gaps between the door and the doorframe. The young Namikaze scratched his head in confusion as he watched the gaps around his door seemingly seal themselves shut. Had his door literally just altered itself to let Fu out? He would need to have Izo double-check the locking seals on the thing just to make sure that there wasn't anything he was missing. For now though, he needed to sleep and get mentally prepared for tomorrow. He would have to summon one of the elder foxes to overlook everything and gauge Ashi on whether or not she could sign the contract. While he was on good terms with the Fox clan, the elders were never pleased to have their meditation interrupted. Depending on which one he got stuck with, things could go very well or very slowly. Out of the three of them, Kaku was the most impatient and grumpy, Shiara was the sweet and kind one, while Nami was the more impassive and easygoing of the three. The blonde did slightly hope that he ended up with Kaku, just for the sake of not potentially getting Ashi caught up in any of the clan's problems. He cared about the foxes, but they were often more trouble than they were worth, especially in Konoha. This is going to go horribly, I can just feel it, he muttered as he collapsed onto his bed with a deep sigh. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Izo woke up with a pained groan. Altering Anko's curse seal had been very draining on the small amount of his reserves that he allowed himself access to. Removing the piece of Orochimaru's soul had been a piece of cake, as was reconfiguring what was there of the seal so it wouldn't be a hindrance to her anymore. The real problems came when he decided to get creative and interweave numerous seals within and around the base of the cursed seal. It was like trying to build a city on top of a mountain of polished shit. Orochimaru had really only put in the bare minimum of effort when it came to his cursed seals. With a deep sigh, the team tried to roll over and figure out where he was, only to find that he couldn't move. Waking up a bit more, he took note of several things that he saw as odd. The first of which was the incredibly soft pillows that his head was being held up against, along with the unnatural warmth of said pillows. It took him a few seconds to figure it out, but he eventually realized just where he was and what he was being held up against. The real question now was how the hell he was going to get out of his situation without being castrated by Anko. Without many obvious options, he went for the pretending to be asleep approach until inspiration struck. "I know you're awake, brat," the snake summoner said. And just like that, all hope was shattered. Izo groaned again as he tried to pull himself away from Anko and await his inevitable ass-kicking, only to have her forcefully wrap her arms around him and hold him snug up against her, subsequently keeping his face trapped between her breasts. "No way, brat. You're staying there and enjoying this for a little while longer," Anko growled playfully. "Why the hell am I on your bed? Why are you cuddling me? And why on earth are you not trying to kill me right now?" Izo asked lazily. He was already preparing himself for an attack, so even if this was a trick, he would be ready to escape somehow. If worst came to worst, he would simply have to activate the submission section of her curse seal, which he had left in there for a last resort. I guess you deserve the answer to those," Anko mused. "You're in my bed because I put you here, I am cuddling you because I was cold, and I'm not trying to kill you because I have no reason to," she explained calmly. "And yet I fail to feel any safer," he droned irritably. "Just let me up so I can fix myself," Anko pouted but let Izo sit up anyway. She watched in fascination as the teen stumbled to his feet groggily and lazily went through some hand seals before she felt his chakra pulse and seemingly grow instantly. Izo let out a deep breath as soon as he was done and cracked his neck loudly before falling back onto the bed with a content smile. Anko just continued to stare at him in confusion for a few moments before reaching over and poking the boy curiously. "Do not poke me," he growled. "What the hell was that just now? How can you refill your reserves like that?" she questioned. If it was some kind of technique, then she was almost prepared to bargain for it. Being able to refill her chakra reserves that fast would be quite possibly the most useful thing to have in her arsenal. Despite her pride in her skills, even she was aware of her rather mediocre chakra levels. It was the only thing she somewhat despised about herself. That, Anko, was a magic trick, and yes, it requires magic hands, so don't even think about asking how to do it, Izo said quickly, chuckling lightly at the woman's pouting glare. It's a trick, of my own design actually. I even managed to implement something very similar into Naruto's seal, he explained. So, it's a seal? Anko asked, furrowing her brows. Why the hell didn't he show her that earlier so she could ask for it in her own seal? Sort of. It does involve a lot of seals, but there is some more complex aspects that go into it. It would take me a good week at least to put a normal person through the whole process. Me and Naruto were special cases. Well, he was a special case, I was just a fortunate freak of nature. The teen chuckled mirthlessly as he idly scratched at his chest. A very fortunate freak of nature, Anko frowned as she gazed over the boy intensely. The only parts of him that weren't covered in bandages or clothing was his fingertips and the lower half of his face. Everything else was hidden from view, and she suspected that it was not just a fashion trend of his. It wasn't uncommon for ninja to wear clothes to cover themselves. More often than not, it was to cover some sort of combat-related ace, but Izo seemed like the type to not really care about keeping those kinds of things hidden. Considering that he had lived the first 9 years of his life as Orochimaru's guinea pig, Anko had a pretty good idea as to what he was hiding. How bad was it? She asked softly, idly running a hand over the left side of her stomach. The operations, I mean. Izo turned his head and seemed to stare intensely at her for a moment. They were unpleasant. Body modifications of that kind are never enjoyable or very efficient either. The fact that any of his subjects survive at all is a true testament to his ability to keep things alive, useless and warped, but alive, he said casually. Still, I don't imagine you understand it quite as well as others would. He had to keep his meddling with you as minor as possible so as to remain innocent within the village. What did he even end up doing to you anyway? I saw the scar earlier, so he must have done something. The kunoichi pulled her shirt up slightly and showed off a long clean scar running horizontally across her very toned stomach, being several inches in length and just to the left of her navel. Not much really. He messed around with my digestive system and increased my metabolism while letting me last longer without food. I didn't pay much attention to what the medics explained to me, so I only know the basics of it, she replied with a shrug. You don't pay attention to very many things, do you? Izo droned. Nope, the woman answered cheerfully. Perfect, he said before leaping to his feet and making a break for the door. He barely got within 3 meters of the thing before his advance was halted quite violently by a very large and very angry looking snake, probably some kind of python based on its size and constricting strength. The floor suddenly decided to betray him as he was lifted up from it and thrown across the room and back onto the bed, Anko quickly wrapping her arms around him before he could regain his bearings. Izo, in that moment, realized that something, quite probably of an unfortunate nature, was going to befall him within the next few minutes. Did you really think that I would let you go before you explained to me what my new seal does? Anko whispered sweetly. Or before I got to properly thank you for removing that piece of the bastard's soul from me? Izo shuddered slightly as he worked his mind into overdrive. He had two options right now. One, he could relax and go along with things, maybe see where this whole thanking thing went, or he could make another break for it and end up back in the same position, only Anko would be far less pleasant. It was with great injury to his pride that he allowed himself to relax in the woman's embrace and await whatever she had planned. I'm listening, he muttered cautiously. The grin on Anko's face was all that was needed for him to realize that he had made quite possibly the greatest decision of his life. Naruto's eye twitched slightly as he lied motionless on his admittedly oversized bed. He was not exactly what one would call a morning person, nor would one call him not a morning person. He simply never let it bother him one way or another and got on with things. If anything, mornings were a strange part of the day for the blonde, what with Mikado and Izo having their own personal wake-up quirks that would disturb most regular people. That being said, today was proving to have the strangest morning yet, and he had yet to even leave his room. Not that he could. The reason for his overly strange morning was currently laying right next to him, with his arm gripped tightly to her chest. Fu had somehow, at some point during the night, managed to yet again get into his room and crawl into bed with him. Overall, it was not something that bothered him too much. He was a teenage boy, so waking up to a girl in his bed was definitely not going down in his list of bad things. The thing he was bothered by was that the mid-haired girl was somehow getting through his room's defenses without any effort. He really needed to speak to Izo about that. Putting those thoughts away for later, Naruto turned and gazed down at Fu's peaceful and content expression. She was rather cute while asleep, not that she wasn't while she was awake. It was more to do with the fact that she was no longer forcing herself to hide her constant awareness of her surroundings. The girl was always prepared to jump at anything she could deem a possible threat. Fu obviously had a lot of experience in masking it, but Naruto was always aware of her unease around everything new. It was one of the few reasons that he was so unconcerned about her clinging to his arm as often as she did. Okay, I need to solve this little problem before anyone finds Fu's room to be empty and starts looking for her, the blonde thought with only a minor trace of panic. Thinking a little outside of the box, Naruto did the one thing that he was sure would get him out of the girl's grip. In a flash of red, he was on the other side of the room, and unfortunately, so was Fu. The girl barely had time to squeak in surprise before she collided with the ground, Naruto frozen in place next to her with wide eyes. The Hiruzen was not supposed to teleport anyone other than himself and those he specified with his chakra. Fu's existence was really starting to make him question the stability and effectiveness of many of the seals he relied on in life. What the hell? Fu groaned as she held her head in pain. Looking around blearily, she took notice of the room that most certainly was not the one she had been allowed to stay in, and she also took particular notice to the terrified-looking Naruto standing next to her. Widening her eyes slightly, Fu stared questioningly at the blonde. Why am I in here?" she asked. "That is a brilliant question, but I don't have a clue," Naruto replied, not allowing his fear-frozen body to so much as twitch while he spoke. "Maybe you could enlighten me." Fu blushed brightly and tried to sink into herself, reminding Naruto of Hinata a little too much. She mumbled a few words incoherently as she turned away from the blonde, but still made no attempt to get up off the floor and out of the room. "You going to have to repeat that? I didn't quite catch all of it." The girl pouted and crossed her arms. "I sleepwalk sometimes," she said louder, clearly being extremely embarrassed. "That is interesting to know, but it still doesn't explain how you got in here again," Naruto droned. Fu shrugged. "I dunno." Naruto deadpanned at her. Just how fast could the girl change emotions? Perhaps it was her own defense mechanism, like his ever-joyfulness was for him when he was younger. Didn't make her any easier to understand though. Naruto wouldn't be happy to admit it, but he had honestly expected it to be much easier to bond with another Jinchuriki, especially one that was his age. He guessed he should have thought about it more, since just being a Jinchuriki didn't mean anything considering the Baijiu themselves were not rumored to be all chummy with each other. Still, he had hoped for a bit more than the awkwardness that existed between him and Fu. With a sigh, he offered his hand to her. "Come on, let's get something to eat before we go out for the day," he said softly. Fu took his hand gratefully and he helped her to her feet. Rubbing her head again, she winced. The pain of being dropped to the floor still hadn't completely disappeared. Following Naruto out of the room and down the stairs, she had to hold back a giggle at seeing a particularly irate Kurotsuchi trying fruitlessly to get control over her hilariously bad bed hair. The poor Iwakunoichi was doing a rather good impression of an Inuzuka's feral appearance. The death glare she gave the two upon entering the kitchen cemented their need to not laugh or say a word about it to anyone, especially Izo. "Good morning, Kurotsuchi," Naruto greeted politely. "I trust you had a pleasant night's sleep." "Yeah, thanks for taking those seals off of my pillow. Those dreams were starting to get to me." The girl grimaced slightly at the thought of the dreams she had been having the past few nights. "Izo was going to pay for that at some point. It's fine. Izo once did the same thing to me once, only he made me dream about being the servant to a harem of girls." The blonde shuddered at the memory. "It was way worse than anyone could imagine." Kurotsuchi stared at Naruto oddly. "Are you gay or something? I won't judge if you are." Naruto's eyes widened comically. "What? No. I'm perfectly straight," he exclaimed. "And yet you talk about having a dream where you are the servant to a harem of girls as if it were a nightmare. I only know of gay guys doing that. Next thing you're going to say is that it was only because you were a sex servant to the harem." She froze as Naruto blushed and looked away. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" The Namikaze frowned. "There is nothing wrong with me," he defended childishly. "You're a teenage boy who thinks dreaming about being used by a harem of girls is a bad thing. That is the universal dictionary definition of wrong, unless you're gay." The Iwakunoichi droned. "I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't want to dream about that," Naruto muttered with a pout. "Does the Kyuubi interfere with your dreams?" Fu asked curiously. "Chome does it to me sometimes, but she only ever tries to make things fun, even if it doesn't always work. She also trained me a little bit in my dreams." "Wait, your Baijiu trained you?" Kurotsuchi asked disbelievingly. Fu nodded happily. "Yep. But only basic things like chakra control and how to fly using my wings. She doesn't know much more of anything that can be applied to humans," she explained cheerfully. "Huh? You learn something new every day," Naruto muttered in mild surprise. But to answer your question, no, the QB doesn't interact with me, at least not anymore. He used to whisper advice and things to me, but he stopped doing that a few years ago. Haven't heard from him at all since then, and to be perfectly honest, I don't care. He never helped out as much I believe he could, and after all of my training, I'm fairly confident in myself for now anyway. Have you two got any plans for the day? Izo didn't come back at all last night, so I'm bored out of my mind until one of you decide to drag me off somewhere, Kurotsuchi grumbled. Well, I have something to do at the Inuzuka compound, and then I was planning on taking Fu around to get some new clothes, Naruto replied casually. You're welcome to join us if you want. Anything will be better than being stuck in this place for another day by myself. I've already explored all of the interesting parts that I have access to, and I really don't want to sit around reading books all day, the girl complained. On the bright side, I will at least be able to help Mindy over there choose some decent clothes. No offense to you, but boys generally don't know what they're doing when it comes to girls' clothes, Naruto shrugged. No offense taken. I'm dense, not delusional. Girls' stuff is way too complicated for me to even consider knowing about. Complicated? Fu asked in confusion. Isn't just to cover the important bits? Pretty much, yeah. But then you also have to worry about how good it looks, what your overall aim is for the outfit, and how practical it is. Personally, I think comfort trumps all, but looking good while doing it doesn't hurt anyone, except for the enemy, and maybe your boyfriend. The Iwakunoichi winked playfully at the green-haired girl at her last comment. Please don't say things like that while we are with the Inuzuka. The thing I have to do involves a potentially easily influenced little girl. I refuse to get the shit kicked out me because you corrupted the clan head's daughter, the blonde droned. Yeah, I get it. Just take me away from this house for a few hours and I'll be happy, she said flippantly. Naruto rolled his eyes and gestured for the girls to head to the door. Let's just go before I change my mind. He knew that something was going to annoy him at some point today. He just wasn't sure what it was yet. If it was one of the girls, he could manage it. If it was his brother, he could cope with it. And if it was Tsume, he could deal with it. But if by some chance it was something to do with the contract signing itself, then he was going to end up with a major headache. I really wish I hadn't summoned those foxes for Ashi. This is more trouble than I bargained for, he whined to himself as he followed the girls out of the house. Anko stared unsurely at her arm as she held a kunai shakily to her skin. She glanced over to Izo, who appeared to be observing her with interest. Now many would be wondering why Anko was seemingly getting ready to slice into her own limb, and the answer was somewhat simple. She was testing out one of the new features of her seal. It was a bit hard to believe at first, but Izo insisted that it should work. The key word being should. It was also the main reason that she was hesitant. She was sadistic, not emo. Cutting herself was not something that she was prepared to do on a simple whim. Are you sure this will work? She asked skeptically. Should do. I mean, the seal is supposed to do a lot of things for your benefit, but this one should be your most useful considering how the original curse seal was so infused with your body and chakra network. At worst, you'll just end up with another scar, so no biggie, Izo replied casually as he took a sip from the cup of tea in his hand. Nice tea, by the way. Never thought it would be your kind of thing. The woman smiled genuinely. Yeah, tea ceremonies always serve to calm me down. I guess I only really got into it because I had a stupid childish dream of one day being on the good terms with the Hokage and the Fire Daimyo. After Orochimaru's betrayal, that dream was gone. But the habit stuck, she explained. Well, that's too bad. You could have made one hell of a royal escort, the teen said cheekily. Anko deadpanned at him. Gee, thanks, she drawled. I aim to please, he stated proudly. Now hurry up and cut yourself so I can see if my seal works, he ordered. The snake summoner rolled her eyes and sliced into her arm, wincing slightly at the pain. A battle-hardened kunoichi she may have been, but cuts still fucking hurt. She dropped the kunai carelessly to the floor as she watched the thick crimson liquid flow freely from the deep wound. It stung for a while until the feeling was drowned out by a strong burning sensation. The blood stopped flowing and quickly dried at an amazing rate. Her skin around the area dried and bulged slightly before turning purplish and becoming scaled. Anko's eyes widened in surprise as the wound healed and that section of her arm was completely replaced by purple scales, not unlike the snakes she summoned. The scaled skin suddenly began to pale before simply peeling off of her arm to reveal fresh and unblemished normal skin underneath. Well, color me impressed, she thought in shock. Rapid healing was without a doubt one of the best things a shinobi could have in their line of work. The only real questions now was to what extent it would function and what were the consequences of using it. So, what are the limits of this thing? She asked curiously before her eyes widened in fear as her wrist exploded in a sharp pain. Looking down, She watched as her now severed hand fell lifelessly to the floor and blood poured out of the open wound that had been her wrist. Turning to look at Izo, she saw that he had used one of his short swords to do the job and was now observing her with interest. She couldn't even concentrate enough to scream or yell at him before her arm suddenly felt like it had been submerged in lava. She looked down with teary eyes and watched the rather disturbing scene unfold. Much like the cut had done before, the blood simply stopped flowing and dried rapidly, but that was where the similarities ended. A good section of her wrist suddenly paled drastically and became scaled before gaining a purplish tint. It bulged and swelled until it split into 5 long purplish-white extensions, which much to her shock, formed into snakes. The snakes all hissed before wrapping around each other and seemingly melting into one as their heads elongated. By the end of it, Anko's missing hand had been replaced by a purple, scaled, and fat-looking hand. Izo watched on in observation and hummed thoughtfully. The regeneration function seemed to be working perfectly, even if it was a little slow and apparently quite painful. Such things were to be expected of the first few times, but Izo was sure that she would adapt to that quickly. Anko was a strong and stubborn kunoichi, not the kind to let a little pain stop her from something. The one thing that he had not expected was the method in which her body regenerated. Rapidly forming snakes from the wound and forcing them to merge and fuse into what was required was extremely effective, more so if she could halt the process halfway and utilize the creatures through mental command. For now though, he would simply be content with it working properly. While Izo was thinking over things, Anko was staring at her new hand dumbfounded. The pain had disappeared by this point, but the strange sensation of having her hand back was still there. She looked down at her severed hand and was surprised to see that it had gone white and shriveled up, much like the shed skin of a snake. Looking back to her newly reformed hand, she found that it didn't quite feel right, and it wasn't because it was scaly and fat. If anything, it felt like she was wearing a very thick glove. This feeling proved to be somewhat true as the scales all began to turn white and shrivel up. Anko decided to speed up the process as she began peeling off the scaled skin, the end result being her left with a perfectly normal-looking and functioning hand. Well, I'm glad that worked out. The old geezer would kill me if I crippled one of the few capable and good-looking kunoichi of the village, Izo said in relief. From what I can tell, your regeneration should be capable of handling most non-fatal injuries. I would like to say you could bounce back from a potentially fatal wound, but it's best not to overestimate these things, he said casually. Anko nodded dumbly as she continued to flex her hand. She knew she should be angry, furious even, at the boy for doing what he did. But all the good he had done for her over the past day far outweighed the bad of him cutting off her hand, especially since it grew back. It would be pointless to get mad at him for something that in the end did not actually affect her. So how does this work? She asked softly. Anko was not naive enough to think that this kind of ability came without some serious drawbacks. Tsunade was the only one she could think of with a similar ability, and that technique was rumored to drain directly from the Sanin's life force. It's actually very simple. You get injured, it goes to work and heals everything to how you were at the time the seal was created. However, you will not heal if you do not have enough chakra to fuel the regeneration without issues. Keeping that in mind, should your chakra be sealed off, you will be vulnerable for the duration of time that it is sealed away, but once it's unsealed you will still regenerate from any injuries you gained while you were vulnerable, the Uzumaki explained flippantly. The purple-haired woman stared at Izo in awe, her mouth open slightly in a dumbfounded expression. And the repercussions? She managed to ask in surprise. Well, you're going to have to eat more to maintain the needed proteins and stuff, as in a lot more depending on how often you get hurt. Other than that, there will be noticeable strain on your chakra reserves whenever it happens, meaning this is not something you can rely on mid-battle, and I suspect that you might lose a year or two of your lifespan should you overexert the ability constantly. Izo shrugged nonchalantly. I'm sort of just speculating here. I'm not what one would call a qualified doctor. You want a better explanation, go and talk to Tsunade or someone, Anko deadpanned. You are the most unhelpful useful person I have ever met, she drawled irritably. Clearly you have yet to meet Shikamaru, Izo mumbled. Shika what now? Never mind, he said, turning his attention to the severed limb still laying on the floor. I would get rid of that if I were you. Trust me when I tell you that it is difficult to explain why you have body parts lying around your house. Anko glanced emotionlessly at the hand and shrugged as she went to pick it up with the intentions of simply throwing it in the trash. It wasn't as if she had anything else she could use it for other than an elaborate prank, and she had kind of grown out of pranking people. She quickly pulled her hand back when her hand twitched and had a spasm. Her eyes widened as it appeared to liquefy into some kind of goo and mold itself into a small white snake with purple rings going down its length. Overall, it just looked like a small baby snake, being just over a foot long. Well. This is unexpected, Izo mused in an obviously amused tone. I am both amazed and concerned by this. I'm not going to turn into a snake, am I? Anko asked worriedly. Not that I am aware of, the teen replied offhandedly. But a piece of you did just turn into its own life form. Just as a wild guess, I would say that your regeneration has some kind of weird mitosis function. Would you humor me and cut off a finger or something? The woman glared at him but went along with it as she reached down and retrieved her kunai. Cutting of her left pinky finger, she winced as the regeneration process did its thing and watched her severed digit expectantly. Both Anko and Izo were surprised when the small white snake slithered over to the finger and coiled itself around it, the digit seemingly assimilating into the creature with no effort as the snake noticeably grew another inch long. The small reptile quickly slithered to Anko's feet and stared up at her almost expectantly, tilting its head slightly as it hissed. This is just wrong. I wouldn't say wrong, more like weird and unnatural, Izo said thoughtfully. Unnatural is the same thing as wrong, Anko snapped. How the hell can be so calm about this? A piece of me just turned into a living fucking snake. Where is his panic? Anko, I am unnatural, that does not make me wrong. Now please calm down and let me think about this, the Uzumaki muttered. Anko winced slightly as she realized what she had said. She took a deep breath and calmed herself as she went back to staring awkwardly at the small snake at her feet. It was still just staring at her as if she were its world, its everything. It was an odd feeling to have something look at her like that, the kind that Anko had thought only a parent could feel about their child. She deadpanned as she realized that she had just compared a snake to a child. I would probably have several choice words to say about that should she learn of it. Thankfully, she planned on making sure no one found out. You just compared that snake to a child, didn't you? Izo asked in amusement. Shit. Don't worry. It can be our little secret. For the right price, the teen said ominously. The snake summoner narrowed her eyes on the boy. What do you want then? A blowjob? She asked seriously. Honestly, it wouldn't be all that unexpected if that was what he wanted. She had a pretty good idea of how teenage boys thought, and the chance of a blowjob usually had them wrapped around her finger for the most part. No, he replied bluntly. I want another cup of tea. Anko gawked at Izo. I just offered you a sexual favor and you turned it down for a cup of tea. Izo shrugged. What can I say? You make one mean cup of tea, he said casually. Oh, by the way, try and give the snake a mental command. I want to see how that works. She raised an eyebrow at that. Perhaps the snake could function like one of her lower class summons. Now I just need to think of something to ask it to do. She paused as she glanced sideways at Izo, who was casually putting his short sword away into one of the seals that she suspected were underneath his bandaged arms. Perfect. She chirped mentally as she grinned evilly at the little snake. Izo very calmly shot his hand out and grabbed the snake in midair as it lunged for his throat. The little thing was disturbingly fast given its size, and from what he could feel from its squirming, it was also quite strong. He was surprised when its head seemingly collapsed and molded into another tail, while its tail did the opposite and turned into its head, allowing it to bite him on the arm. Even Anko was a little surprised by that, but she was also happy by the success of her little snake. It seemed to follow her orders rather well. Well, now that all seems fine, I would suggest you have something to eat and get some rest. Regeneration, even if it was just your hand, still takes a fair bit of energy. Keep an eye on your pet here and tell me if anything odd happens. I'll be checking in on you every now and then to make sure you're going okay with the seal, Izo said as he stood up and made his way to the door. Hey, wait up, Anko called out quickly. Izo stopped and turned to her curiously. Yes? Why? Why are you being so nice and all? I know we're both a part of Root, but I also know that this is a bit too much for you guys to just be making sure I'm an effective kunoichi and that the seal won't cause problems. So why? She asked. Izo smirked. Us failures have to stick together, right? Orochimaru deemed both of us as failures, so it's only right that we help each other to prove him wrong, he said softly. One more thing though. That seal has 2 activation levels. The first one is simple enough, but you should only use it as a backup if things go bad. The second level is a bit more complicated. I am warning you now. It is a last resort. Once you activate it for the first time, even I won't be able to predict what will happen. It might be fine, but it might also leave you with permanent changes, both physically and mentally. Anko nodded her head. Alright, I'll keep that in mind. Good. Now if you would excuse me, I have a ramen waitress to flirt with, Izo said cheerfully before walking out and closing the door. A hiss drew Anko's attention to the small snake that had somehow wrapped itself around her arm without her knowing. Its location, while a little surprising, was not what Anko was paying attention to. "Don't look at me like that. You aren't even old enough to judge me yet." The snake gave her a stare. "I don't give two turtle shits if you were once a part of me. As of right now, you are no more than 5 minutes old." The snake rolled its eyes and slithered up to her neck, wrapped around it, and went to sleep. Anko huffed irritably. "Cheeky little shit, thinking you can judge me. Mooching off my body heat, rolling your eyes at me. Keep acting like that, see how long you last." Naruto walked calmly through the streets within the Inuzuka district. Fu and Kurotsuchi were following behind him, but both seemed more concerned with observing the village around them and chatting happily with each other. It had probably been a bit too long since Kurotsuchi had a decent conversation with another girl. Mikado didn't count since she was basically crazy. Arriving at the clan head's house, he wasn't at all surprised to find Tsume and Ashi waiting for him at the door. Kuromaru was also there, and both he and Naruto shared a glare. Tsume was grinning viciously at him, as if daring him to do anything that would give her an excuse to set the clan's dogs on him, while Ashi was simply hopping up and down in excitement. Naruto knew from the moment that he saw the girl that there was definitely no way to talk her out of this. He had a sneaking suspicion that Tsume hadn't even really tried to talk her out of it either. Hopefully she remembered to at least explain the responsibility of the summoning contract. "Do all of the Inuzuka look like that, or is it just a shared fashion sense?" Fu asked curiously. She had seen numerous ninja in the area walking around with dogs at their sides, feral appearances, and those strange red markings on their cheeks. Since Taki had practically no clans that extended outside of a single family, Fu was a little unsure as to why so many people looked so similar. "Hey, yeah. The Inuzuka have always been known for their feral appearance. Made them stand out a bit during the Third War and made things easier for us. They were the only ones from Konoha who could truly plow their way through Iwa's stronger Dodenjutsu," Kurotsuchi replied offhandedly. "Although I don't know why an Iwa kunoichi is in Konoha, and even if I am flattered by the compliment, the girl is right. My clan do in fact all look like this," Tsume said with a grin as the three teens reached her. "I wouldn't make any assumptions about not being heard around these parts. The Inuzuka hear everything that goes on here," Naruto warned with a hint of seriousness. He did not want either of the girls talking about him being a Namikaze out in public. The consequences could be disastrous. "Naruto!" Ashi squealed happily as she simply appeared in front of him. "Is that the contract?" she asked excitedly, staring hungrily at the large scroll strapped to the blonde's back. The blonde groaned mentally. "Yes, Ashi, that is the contract scroll." With near-practiced ease, Naruto reached out and caught the girl by the collar of her shirt before she could reach the scroll. "No, you do not get to touch it yet," he droned. Ashi pouted and crossed her arms. "You're no fun. This is not supposed to be fun. Now hurry up and get inside so we can get this over with and I can finally go have some ramen. I can't even remember the last time I had ramen. It's been that long," he said, almost on the verge of comical anime tears. "Didn't you have ramen for every meal on the way back from Taki?" Fu asked. She was starting to suspect that her fellow Jinchuriki had some kind of addiction, and that was always a bad thing to have in their line of work. "Yes, but not Ichiraku ramen," Naruto exclaimed. "Girls, I will pay you to look the other way while I beat the brat half to death," Tsume offered hopefully. "How much?" Kurotsuchi asked curiously while Fu just stared at her in shock. "Oh, don't look at me like that, Mindy. I'm not from this village and I have no connection or feelings towards any of these tree huggers." "Money is money," Tsume snorted. "Finally someone gets it. Way too many shinobi wannabes who think we function on honor. Makes kunoichi wuss out more often than not when it comes to doing what needs to be done on a mission," she said with a sneer. "Tell me about it. I mean, sure, it's disgusting half of the time, but you got to do what you got to do. Then there's all the fangirls." Kurotsuchi shuddered as she thought about the fangirls from her own village. They all had worshipped Datara at one point or another, and most of them hadn't even stopped after he had gone rouge and slaughtered so many people on his way out. The devotion of a fangirl was disgusting and insulting. Tsume observed Kurotsuchi with a keen eye before smirking viciously and offering her hand out to the girl. "I like you, kid. Tsume Inuzuka, clan head," she introduced herself. Kurotsuchi smiled and shook the woman's hand. "Kurotsuchi, granddaughter of the Sandai Matsuchi kid," she replied. The Inuzuka clan head rose an eyebrow at that. "So you're the one that had the council throwing a fit? Hey, should have seen the look on the elders' faces when they heard that you were under the Uzumaki brat's custody. Worth the headache if you ask me." Naruto hung his head. "Damn, didn't even get to take picture for blackmail," he grumbled. "Anyway, can we hurry this along? It's almost lunchtime and I don't want to be on the receiving end of the fox elders' ire should we interrupt their mealtime." "Sure. I set a room up just for this, Tsume replied casually as she began leading the group through the house and into a large dojo-like room. The Kyubi Jinchuriki chuckled quietly. You know, the Fox Elders aren't exactly what one would call large. We could have done this in Ashi's bedroom if we wanted, he said amusedly. Tsume growled deeply. Thanks for telling me that before I made a fool out of myself, she muttered sarcastically. Alright, here goes nothing, Naruto mumbled as he weaved through some hand signs and bit his thumb. Summoning Jutsu. A black ceiling, matrix quickly spread out in front of the blonde before a small cloud of smoke erupted in the center of it. You had better have a good reason for summoning me at this hour of the day, Barat. An elderly voice snapped irritably. Naruto grimaced. Shit. I actually got Kaku, he cursed. Don't go curing my name like that, boy. Keep in mind that I can still suspend your summoning rights. The group all watched in fascination as the smoke was swept away by a gust of wind to reveal a small gray fox with white stripe patterns over his fur, a long tuft of which extended from under his chin to look like an elderly man's beard. The small fox regarded the group around him with unconcerned laziness and boredom, although it was easy to see he was irritated. I'll say it again. You had best have a good reason for summoning me here, Naruto Kaku said sternly. Calm down. I only summoned you here for a proposition, Naruto replied quickly. There's someone who wants to sign the Fox contract. Kaku raised eyebrow at that and glanced around at the other occupants of the room. He instantly disregarded the feral-looking woman since she had a large dog by her side. The girl that smelled of burnt earth was also not likely, as was the green-haired one, although they did have potential. His eyes landed on the final member and he narrowed them ever so slightly. A young Inuzuka girl. It was not exactly a ridiculous concept, but it was very unheard of. Foxes and dogs did not get along after all. Kaku wasn't overly surprised to spot a small fox kid hiding behind the girl's legs. He did idly remember that one of their clan had been summoned and had yet to return. Turning back to Naruto, Kaku smirked. And why should I give the girl a chance? The Inuzuka clan have been known to hunt down our kin all throughout Fire Country. It has gotten to the point where our kind doesn't even live here without good reason. In fact, I don't see why I shouldn't take this opportunity to weaken the clan considerably as recompense for their actions, he growled angrily, glaring at Tsume directly. He would have also glared at Ashi, but even he was not stupid enough to think that one so young had contributed to the sins of her clan. Tsume flinched at the statement, but she didn't deny it. After the Kyubi's attack, many within Konoha saw fit to take their anger out on the foxes in the surrounding area. It just so happened that the Inuzuka were much better at it than most. She herself had not partaken in the hunts, but she had also not done anything to stop them either. To be completely honest, she would be surprised if the Fox Elder didn't do something to weaken the clan while he had the chance. She would have done the same thing had she been in his position. Naruto frowned. He knew that if he got stuck with Kaku there would be some tension, but now he had to worry about the old fox actually going on a small rampage. He said small because he had seen what the elder fox could do on a big rampage. Needless to say, it would be overkill for just the one clan. Still, he had to convince the fox somehow. Well, I'm not entirely sure myself. I don't really know her too well. But one of your clan seems to have taken a liking to her, so I would take that as a good sign, the blonde replied casually. Off to the side of the room, both Kurotsuchi and Fu watched on in interest. Neither of them had a summoning contract and both were a little intrigued by the process of signing one. Tsume was just doing her best to remain silent and keep Kuromaru from doing anything foolish. Her clan had already done enough to garner the ire of the fox summons, she did not need to add to that extensive list. Kaku turned his head sharply to look at the kit that was still at the girl's feet. Ashi herself was watching on nervously as she tried to make herself look as small and submissive as she could. She knew when she was not supposed to act out, and this fox in front of them practically exuded an aura that demanded respect. The fox elder yipped, causing the small kit to jump a little in fright at being spoken to directly. Nevertheless, it yipped back, and after several back and forth yips, Kaku nodded his head sagely as he hummed in thought. So, girl, I am to understand that you actually understood all of that? Kaku asked curiously. Ashi smiled nervously and nodded. Yeah, I did, she answered meekly. Tsume rose both eyebrows at that. She herself couldn't understand half of the fox's words, and that would go the same for the rest of her clan as well. They were attuned to dogs and in some cases wolves, but foxes used a somewhat more complex form of vocal communication. For Ashi to understand all of it was an unexpected oddity, and one that would hopefully work in her favor. Kaku gave the girl a toothy grin. Well, that is good, I suppose. Even the stupid blonde brat can't understand our kits without one of us older ones there to translate. I'll keep that in mind while I judge you, he said calmly. Naruto pouted and grumbled something about stupid old foxes while Ashi bowed awkwardly. Thank you polite too. Keep going girl and I may just get rid of Naruto and make you our main summoner, the fox mused cheerfully. I'd like to see you try. Nami and Shiara would kill you if you just got rid of me. They still think I'm cute, Naruto stated proudly. The other two fox elders were always his last line of defense against Kaku. They were also the reason that he had even been allowed to sign the contract in the first place. Kaku snorted in amusement. Give those two 5 minutes with this one and they'll forget all about you. She's cuter than you are and can engage in girl talk with them. That's 2 points over you brat. Are all summons like this to their summoners? Fu asked Kurotsuchi quietly. Not really sure. I would like to say no, if only so I can pick on Naruto for being a bitch, the Iwa Kunoichi replied. Alright. I'll cut the girl some slack for now, and I will even overlook her relations for the meantime. If she really wants to sign the contract, then she will need to be tested properly and taught some specific things. The fox elder turned to face Tsume, although his irritation was still very evident. As the girl's apparent legal guardian, I am required to ask you to give me and my clan permission to take her away for an unspecified amount of time for assessment. Do we have it? He asked seriously. Tsume frowned and crossed her arms. Will this assessment put her in any danger? I make no promises, Kaku said offhandedly. The clan had noticed the pleading look that Ashi was giving her and sighed deeply. Fine, you can take her. But I swear, if you or any of your clan do something because of my clan's past actions, I will make sure that we double our efforts, she growled dangerously. Kaku grinned viciously. I would expect nothing less. But I do suggest that you try and steer your clan away from continuing those hunts. Sooner or later, my mates and I will not be able to keep our clan calm, or stop them from coming here themselves, he threatened vaguely. Turning back to Ashi, he casually strolled over to her. Do you need time to prepare? He asked. Ashi shook her head. No, I'm ready. Good. Naruto. You owe me for this. Next time you decide to summon me, I expect something to eat or something to kill, preferably both or one and the same. He grinned as he felt Naruto glare at him. And now we leave a small surge of chakra and the elder fox's tail extended to a very surprising length before wrapping around both Ashi and the fox kid, all three of them suddenly disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto let out a deep sigh now that everything was finally over with, and without any actual issues, thankfully. Fu and Kurotsuchi were a little bummed out that nothing interesting had actually happened, but were also slightly looking forward to going shopping for new clothes. The ones they had were not really their style. Tsume and Kuromaru were uneasy and slightly worried, for obvious reasons, but were also hopeful that things would work out for the best. Well, now that my work here is done, I am leaving. Ichiraku's awaits and I refuse to keep it waiting, Naruto exclaimed. Have fun with whatever you do, he called out to Tsume as he grabbed Fu and Kurotsuchi and disappeared in a sunshine. Tsume hung her head depressingly. With Ashi gone, she actually didn't have anything to do at all. Naruto, Fu, and Kurotsuchi all stared in amazement at the broken and bloody body of Izo. Ayame was standing over the teen with a vicious and proud-looking smirk, a bent and mangled ladle held in her hand. The three new arrivals could all hazard a rather accurate guess as to what had led to the scene before them, and not one of them had anything to say to Ayame that couldn't be classified as a compliment. Ah, Naruto. Good to see you, my boy. Pucci called out happily. And you brought another customer with you again. This calls for a free bowl. Hey Naruto. Sorry about Izo, he was crossing the line again. Ayame apologized sheepishly. What line? I asked you when your shift ends. It's not like I asked what color your underwear was. Izo groaned out indignantly. He let out a pained scream as Ayame stomped down on his knee. You know perfectly well what you were intending to do with that information, the ramen waitress growled. Naruto ignored his brother and sat down on a stoolie. One miso ramen, old man. He ordered eagerly. Coming right up. And what can I get the lovely ladies? The old chef asked the girls as they sat down as well. I'll just get the same thing, Fu ordered unsurely. I'll have a beef ramen, Kurotsuchi said lazily. A few minutes later and all three teen were served their food, Naruto obviously being the most excited and eager to dig in. Unfortunately, it seemed that the universe had chosen today of all days to ruin things for him as an Anbu appeared at the ramen stand in a sunshine. Naruto Uzumaki and Izo Uzumaki, the Hokage had asked for your presence immediately, the masked shinobi stated simply. The world froze and shattered into a million pieces. Naruto turned ever so slowly to stare at the Anbu with an expression of pure horror. He had to ignore Izo's amused grin lest he try to actually kill his brother for it. I am going to kill The old man, he whispered quietly. And I am going to enjoy every single second that you fail to do so, Izo said happily before he was quickly silenced by another hit from Ayame. Well, on the bright side, there's never a dull moment around here. I'm looking forward to seeing this deathmatch between Shinana and Kage. Should be entertaining, right Fu? Kurotsuchi mused, only to get no answer. Fu? She turned to check on the girl, only for her eyes to widen in surprise. Food of the gods, the mid-haired girl mumbled in awe, her eyes shining brightly as she cried tears of joy. Shit, Kurotsuchi and Izo cursed simultaneously. Now there were two ramen-addicted Jinchuriki with potentially endless pits for stomachs. The Ichirakus were going to be very rich people.
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.